Hi Peter, I'm Warwick Hearne and I'm chairman of Delta Plan, and Delta Plan, the associated business is Caboodle Financial Services.
Okay, very good. And I guess you've been working in the financial services sector for 1 or 2 years,
Oh,
Warwick?
just a few, yes.
How
yes,
many?
It's actually 53, I think.
53, so
Yeah.
doing the maths, what year did that
I
start you
started in 64 in
1964.
MLC at North Sydney, when the MLC building in North Sydney was the only office building in North Sydney.
So is it fair to say you might have seen 1 or 2 changes in the
Oh,
industry?
the odd
over
change, yes, the odd change.
Okay.
A lot of it in technology. So I
Yep.
started there in what was called a DP department. And DP department had a lot of punch cards and old mainframes and those sorts of things. I spent 10 years in the DP department before I then moved to a software house.
Okay, all right. So give us a very brief description of the types of roles that you've had in
Okay.
your 53 years in the industry.
Yeah, so I started in the DP department at the bottom and
Yep.
went to all the most senior role I had there was a team member of a team of 5 that built their replacement system.
Okay, and then on to...
And then went to a software house for 10 years
Yep.
where we built software which we distributed around the world. I built that business to 700 people and back to 500 over 10 years with all the exciting
Fantastic.
things that entailed, and then moved back into the insurance industry into MMI, the general insurance company, where I was general manager of corporate services, which included things like Minister for Good Times, as they used to call it. You know, I was responsible for sponsorships and those sorts of things, but also HR, admin, property, those sorts of things. And then I stopped my corporate career then and went into consulting. And these days you would have called me a business coach for the 20 years since then. And my relationship with Caboodle started off as a coaching one with Peter Diamantidis, who's my eldest daughter. She's MD there and I'm chairman, and as I say to people, I do as I'm told.
That sounds like very sensible approach, Warwick, when you're
Yeah,
working
well,
with your
it's
daughter.
longevity is important, you know, when you get to my age, and so, you know, you need to maintain good relationships with the people you work with, and you don't want them kicking you out.
Okay, so thinking about your time, and there would be few in the industry that have had a longer duration in the sector. What have been the major changes, looking at it from the advisor perspective, what have been the major changes that you've seen, the real tipping points, the paradigm changes over the journey?
Yeah, okay. Look, I think there are a couple of interesting things. When I joined MLC, they used to employ a large number of advisors every year, and I can recall them training for about 4 to 6 months, and then they'd go out into a regional sales office with a regional sales manager who'd flog them and beat them out into the bushes every week. And so that whole risk-based significant sales force environment that existed in all the majors at that time.
But you haven't used the word tight agency system.
No, and indeed those guys, while that was true, that's what it was, those guys didn't perceive it that way. Their clients perceived them as representing MLC, AMP, the Prudential, you know, the man from the Prue was a common expression people used, you know, and we all knew that. AMP was the same. They had many regional people who were the AMP man in Young or whatever, and so that was the environment then, and those people were revered people in their communities. And
Okay, well, I want to continue this conversation, but let's just go back before 1964. What were you doing before you entered the financial services sector?
well, I left school, so I was at school, and I had a bit of a bent for maths type things, and so I ended up at MLC to do an actuarial training, which I ultimately completed at Macquarie University. Even though I was doing it part-time when the professor said it was a full-time degree, I took, I think it was 8 years, whereas it was supposed to take 3 or 4.
Congratulations. But did you have dreams of a particular vocation when you were a young boy?
Well, look, it was interesting, another major change. You know, when I joined MLC, you joined an organisation that had every job you'd ever want to do for the rest of your career, you know, and so that was what you did, and you particularly picked a good organisation that, you know, could deliver all of those things. Yeah. And so that's what I joined, and it was a big change after 10 years to decide to move out, you know, because the software house opportunity seemed to be right for me. I was heavily experienced in that stuff by then, but it was a change, yeah.
All right, so you were talking about the man from the Prue, and advisors are very proud to represent the AMP or the Prue.
Yep.
From the consumer point of view, is the industry better structured today without a tight agency system?
Look, the confusion I have and the reason I'm hesitating is that I think the blend of wealth advice and risk advice has been a serious negative for our industry. Okay, so my view is that the risk advisors as they existed in the old days really knew that stuff really well, they knew how to sell it, and somewhere along the way, just pre the GFC and because of the corporate super world, we convinced a whole lot of those great risk advisors to become, in quotes, financial planners and to move their specialty into something in which, in my view, they were then less well equipped to deliver.
But do you think that it was the GFC or that it started perhaps in the late 80s or early 90s even?
Yeah, look, it wasn't the GFC, it was before the GFC, and it was the corporate super availability of massive amounts of investment funds because of guaranteed super contributions. That environment meant that they were being attracted by the industries, to help represent and attract those funds, and so they morphed across from being risk advisors to being financial planners. And while for many of them I think that was a good thing, you could say some of them found it more difficult than others, and the industry, being the risk advice industry, lost a massive volume of people who sell the product, and I don't think it's ever recovered from that. And I wouldn't be surprised if I was able to prove that the amount of insurance has in fact reduced over that time rather than increased.
All right, so we're talking about the past and the present. What about the future? For risk-focused advisors in particular and for the consumers they serve, what environment are we going to look at?
I think risk-based advisors have got the world at their feet. That we've had such a massive reduction in the number of advisors specifically addressing that need, that the opportunity is enormous. And I think about a couple of special situations like the volume of SME small business owners, leaders who are largely uninsured for the risks that they are effectively taking. They put their house on the line when they get the loan from the bank, and they don't realise what it's going to mean if they get run over by a truck tomorrow. The family get kicked out, and they just haven't thought any of that through, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, not just a few.
Okay, you clearly have a passion for what you do, but when you're not doing what you do in terms of your vocation, what else are you doing?
Look, I'm a very ordinary golfer.
Okay.
I'm actually doing one thing really well in my golf, and that is that I'm getting closer and closer to playing my age, which is what golfers always aim to do, and I'm managing to achieve that by getting older, not because I'm playing any better. Okay, but I am getting older.
Very good.
So I'm hoping to maintain my handicap long enough that I'll play to my age at some point in the future.
Okay, and what does retirement mean to you, Warwick? You're closer to the end of your career than the beginning. Are you ever going to retire?
I doubt
what
it.
Does retirement mean?
I think there are several people who have a vested interest in me not doing that. My wife, probably most of all, would I think be staggered, indeed significantly concerned if I was going to be home all day. And I think that I really look forward to continuing to have the interaction with the industry on whatever level it is, clearly at a reduced pace, so I'm happy for the pace to slow up, but I don't see myself ever moving on. While ever I can continue to do some of the things I do, I will.
And as
do
you
so.
interact with the industry, what's your message perhaps to the newer entrants to the sector, the newer advice entrants to the industry? Would you have a message for them based on the experiences that you've had over the years?
Yeah, look, I think my feeling of the marketplace is that the new people today expect to have somebody who helped them do what they do. I mean, we don't now go to a gym, we have a personal trainer. An advisor is just yet another form of personal trainer in a different space. And so I think the advice opportunity is going to grow significantly. What we need to do is to create the same aura around the advice deliverers as exist in other advice areas like the medical profession, etc. And so we've, if you like, lost our way a little in that sense, and I think we need to get that
looking
back.
To regain it, but you nonetheless seem optimistic for the advice sector for the future.
Just because the marketplace is massive, there is no end. I can't see any end to. You can have as many clients as you like. There are so many out there underserviced, and so I mean I mentioned SMEs as one group. I mean, think about the number of people who are going to be retiring with all sorts of concerns about how they're going to last financially through to their old age. What an enormous market that is. It's massive, and they need help, to do that job. So that's the wealth side and the risk side with the SME type people. So,
Well, on that optimistic note, Warwick, thank you very much for your time.
my pleasure, Peter. Thanks for the opportunity.